Hello. Welcome to Assistance Dogs in the UK, Rights, Responsibilities, Training Standards and Behaviour. Don't look at me, Ruby chose the title. I am Amy Gardiner and I am a trustee, head of PR and head of training and behaviour at the Assistance Dog Council, which is a charity set up to provide advocacy and information about assistance dogs, basically, to service providers and to handlers. I myself am an assistance dog handler. I have a medical alert dog called Ted, who I rely on for my independence, for my sins. And my role in the Assistance Dog Council is usually to preemptively reach out to service providers and see how we can support them in allowing assistance dogs into their service or premises. Not been doing very much because of the pandemic. Most service providers are closed, but historically we have done a lot of good work to get companies to accept assistance dogs who were very reluctant to do so before. So it's good work. I really enjoy it. I know it's probably the goal of quite a few trainers to work with assistance dogs, and it is really rewarding because these dogs are life-saving dogs. I myself used to struggle to go out for long days, and now I can go out and enjoy days out and not have to worry at all. The difference they make to people's lives is phenomenal. There's a lot of misinformation though about assistance dogs, so I'm here to clear up a bit of those misconceptions and misinformation for people that maybe want to work with people who would like an assistance dog, or people themselves who would like to have an assistance dog. Now, it's important to note that this is only accurate for the UK. Different countries have different laws, and I think someone later on in the conference is doing a talk on service dogs in America, because in America they're called service dogs. Here a service dog is a dog that's in the military or in the police. Here they're called assistance dogs. So for more accurate information on the US, I suggest potentially going to that webinar probably. But I can tell you all about assistance dogs in the UK. So the first thing we have to look at is, what is an assistance dog? And the answer isn't as clear cut as you might think. And you have to bear with me a little bit here because it can get complicated. So there's a piece of legislation in the UK called the Equality Act 2010. And assistance dogs are not actually mentioned in the legislation, apart from in a section called section 173. And this only refers to private hire vehicles. So how do we define an assistance dog, really? Like I said, bear with me. So I am a disabled person, and so I have the right to use auxiliary aids to access services, and services have to put reasonable adjustments in place to allow me to access their services with my auxiliary aids. An auxiliary aid is just something that mitigates disability. So a wheelchair is an auxiliary aid, a walking stick is an auxiliary aid, a finger prick testing kit, a glucose testing kit is also an auxiliary aid. An assistance dog is an auxiliary aid. They're not classed as dogs. An assistance dog has the same rights in law as a wheelchair. I say there are some exemptions. So I, as a disabled person, am allowed to utilise a dog as an auxiliary aid to access services. The exemptions I mentioned previously are places where it wouldn't be reasonable to have an assistant dog with me, which would be things like sterile units on wards, theatre, not theatre as in the plays, I mean theatre as in surgical theatre, and food preparation areas, so kitchens, but not the cafe, so not the seating area, but actually going into the kitchen. So this is where it gets a little grey, because people obviously have their assistance dogs, and they often have dogs that are labelled as in training. And these in training dogs are often said to not have rights, but we have to remember that it's actually not the dog that has the rights to access services, it's actually the person who has rights. So an assistance dog in training still has rights, well, the person has rights to use it to mitigate their disability, so long as they do mitigate a disability. Let's say you had a tiny puppy, that wouldn't be reliably mitigating your disability, and so wouldn't have the same access rights as a dog that was kind of nearing the end of their training journey. And so it's very grey on the whole access when they're in training issue. The whole in training thing stems from puppy walkers, because obviously a puppy walker wouldn't be having, if whether they're disabled or not, wouldn't be having their disability mitigated by the puppy that they were walking, and so they wouldn't have access rights with the puppy. Often stores and services let them in as a gesture of goodwill to allow them to get used to the sights and sounds of different services, but legally they don't have to. Unlike other countries here, it's actually not illegal for a dog to go into a store or into a premises. It's up to the person who owns the store. And often places are no dogs. The reasonable adjustment in this area would be to waiver that for an assistance dog, and it is the legal responsibility of service providers to do so. So, the complicated bit is, if you're an able-bodied person holding an assistance dog, you don't have rights of access with that assistance dog, as they're not mitigating a disability for you. If you're a disabled person and you have a dog but it doesn't mitigate your disability, that is not a disability, that is not an assistance dog, and therefore you don't have the right of access with that dog. It's only a dog who mitigates their handler's disability that has the rights to go into, well, the handler has the right to use their dog. That's a very important distinction. We always talk about the dog having rights, but the dog has no rights. It's the handler that has rights to access services. Now, the law is very vague around assistance dogs. There's nothing in law to do with breeds or training or any sort of standardised test. As we stand now, we are actually against standardised testing. We don't believe that disabled people should have to be tested in order to access the services that able-bodied people can already access. It gets very ethically grey. Also, I don't see how a standardised test could possibly be accessible for all people who require one. And again, it's just the ethical implication of having to test people. It's this thought and this presumption that disabled people are somehow not able to manage, nor are they able to train their own dogs, when the opposite is very true. Lots of disabled people train their own assistance dogs and do a very, very good job of doing so. Assistance dogs are kind of split into two camps. So we have Assistance Dog UK dogs. So these are dogs that are trained by a charity who come under the umbrella organisation of Assistance Dogs UK, or AD UK. as they're abbreviated to. ADUK is a charity that deals with training of assistance dogs, and they do a very good job of it, and they do good work. There are also other organisations that kind of fall outside ADUK, because there is an application programme to be part of ADUK, and these organisations are not bad organisations because they fall outside of ADUK. There are many reputable organisations who are helping train assistance dogs. And then, of course, there's the route that I went down myself, where I trained my own dog. All these routes to getting an assistance dog are completely valid. And all of these dogs operate under the same law, and all of these dogs have the same rights. They all fall under the same legislation. So there is no assistance dog that is better or greater than another. That's quite a common misconception, and you see it quite a lot, and it's one we come across quite a lot, where a service provider will only allow in an assistance dog that has been trained by an ADUK charity, and this is actually not legal. And if you ever see this on your travels, just let me know, and we then go in and liaise with them and sort it out, because it's discriminatory at the end of the day. You can't say that one person can't come in because their auxiliary aid doesn't meet your preconceived standards. But these dogs are doing good work. Types of assistance dog, the fun bit. Guide dogs. Guide dogs help visually impaired people navigate. Again, you can have dogs, we have guide dogs in the UK who train the guide dogs. People also train their own guide dogs. These dogs can find doors, they can find crossings, they can help their owners safely navigate roads and different obstacles in their way. Hearing dogs for the deaf help alert their owners to sounds. So this can be the phone, the doorbell, someone trying to get their attention, or the smoke alarm. Dogs that help with physical disabilities. These dogs can, the best example, I love this example, is you can train the dogs to actually pay with contactless. So they take the wallet or the card and they put it on the contactless reader, and you can actually get a dog to pay by contactless. They help pick things off the floor, pick things off the shelf. They can help unload and load the washing machine, stabilise people at home, help them get out of bed. They really are amazing. And we have these psychological dogs, the psychological assistance dogs. So these are dogs that help people with psychological disabilities or mental disabilities, including things like autism and anxiety-related disorders, and disorders which may cause things like psychosis or disassociation. Dogs can help ground their handlers, provide something called deep pressure therapy, where the dog will lie across the handler and provide a deep pressure. In terms of autism for children, there are a lot of ethical considerations when it comes to tethering. This is a big debated thing in the community for many different reasons. And then we have the category that my dog fits into, the medical alert dogs, who alert to medical episodes. They can do either one of two things. They can pre-warn, they can react. This is things like diabetes and epilepsy and neurological conditions and heart conditions. So we can have a dog who pre-warns that a medical episode is going to happen, usually giving the handler time to either prevent the medical episode from happening, such as in the case of diabetes, or they allow their handler to get to a safe place or position in order to allow the medical episode to happen, but in a safe way. For example, if someone faints, they will not fall and hit their head on the floor, which can be really very dangerous. The react, the dog can wait by the handler until the handler comes round. The dog can perform grounding exercises to help bring their handler round again from the episode. The thing where a dog runs off to get help is vastly contested as well. Some dogs will bark in order to attract the attention of passers-by. It's important to follow the instructions that may be on the assistance dog's vest. Some people have specific instructions what to do on the vest of the dog. So if it says, please leave us alone, do not call 999, then follow those instructions, because it's probably a medical episode which is in hand, and the dog's got it in hand and the handler's got it in hand. Working with assistance dogs is so rewarding just because of the independence that they give their handlers. And there is a demand for people who want training from trainers to train their own assistance dogs. I want to talk a little bit about training standards. There's nothing in law that says that an assistance dog has to be trained, which leaves a lot open to interpretation. But it's important, as it's a reasonable adjustment, for the adjustment to be reasonable. A dog should not lunge at people, growl at people, bite people, shouldn't go to the toilet inside the premises, and shouldn't solicit attention from other people within the store unless it's part of a task. Sometimes a dog may behave in what perceived to be an unruly manner, and I've had this happen to me before, where it's actually a task. I was in a museum, and my dog alerted by jumping up, because he licks me on the face to tell me, because otherwise I ignore him. So he has to jump up and lick me in the face to ensure that I listen to him. And so in the museum he did that. He jumped on my lap with his front paws and he licked my face, and someone made a comment about how unruly he was and how he should be trained better. And actually it was a highly trained medical alert, and he was telling me about an oncoming medical episode. Best not to comment when you see assistance dogs in public. Like I said before, some dogs bark, so to alert people or to bring the person round. Some dogs jump up in order to alert. This is not bad, unruly behaviour. It's just part of the task that they need to do to mitigate the handler's disability. Labelling as well is not written in law. But as someone who liaises with a lot of service providers about accessing services with assistance dogs, this is the number one thing they kind of ask for. They want assistance dogs to be labelled as assistance dogs. And I do mean either as assistance dogs or as, let's say, medical alert dog. Partly, I think this is due to the fear of legal action, but partly is also due to the fact if other people see that dog in the shop and it doesn't have anything specifying it's an assistance dog, they may think it's dog friendly, and it may cause problems in the future, and which in turn may cause access issues in the future. In terms of accessing services, and this has been a big thing actually during the pandemic, no one has the right to your private medical information. So if you were to access a service with an assistance dog, in fact, actually the reasonable adjustment needs to be in place before you access the service. So if someone was to ask you what your dog is for, they can't actually ask you that question. That question is it's not entirely legal to ask someone what their dog is for in order for them to access the service. They can ask if your dog is an assistance dog, but they can't ask why you need the assistance dog or what task the dog performs. Again, I really recommend a dog has a very clear labelling. In fact, I will go and get my own vest to show you what I mean. So I've gone to get my own vest. It will give you a clearer idea. This is one I had custom made, and a lot of people who own or train their assistance dogs have their own gear that they spend a lot of money and time on. If you have a program trained dog, you will have a vest provided usually, but this is mine. As you can see, it's very clearly labelled as an assistance dog. It also says I'm deaf, because I am, well, hard of hearing. I'll come actually to why I've got this on the back later. I have him very clearly just labelled as assistance dog, and do not distract. It's really important, and again, we'll come to this in a minute, that you do not distract working assistance dogs. I love this vest. I've had it custom made. It's new. It's got zips. It's actually a prototype because it's actually got a wide front harness instead of a harness that cuts across the top, the front of the legs. And it was made for me by a friend who was a gear maker, and I love it. So that kind of thing you need very clear. Some people put fun patches on their assistance dogs vest, which is fine. I wouldn't recommend patches that have political meanings attached to them, and I also wouldn't recommend patches with swear words, and I also wouldn't recommend patches instead of having clear labelling like this. So if you were to have this, and then I could have a patch here that was a fun patch that just personalised my gear a little bit, that's absolutely fine. But if I was labelled an emotional support dragon, which I have actually seen once, you can't expect a service provider to get the information that they need when you've got assistance dragon on the side of your dog. Like, it really clearly needs to say what the dog is. That's nothing in law. That's just what I have gathered from liaising with service providers. Really, the law is quite vague around assistance dogs. So everything I'm really telling you here is what I've gathered from service providers about what they want from assistance dog handlers. It's not, I know it's not about what service providers want from you, because legally they have to allow you in. It just prevents access problems in the future, if that makes sense. So, again, I want to talk a bit about behaviour. And I want to go away from, like, if you're an assistance dog handler, I want to be like if you see an assistance dog in person. Assistance dogs, and we're going to go back to this vest again. Do not distract. If you see an assistance dog out and about, it's amazing, because they are amazing dogs and they do amazing things. But please do not talk to the handler, and please do not distract the dog. I've had it all. Please do not make kissy noises at the dogs. Please do not try and call the dog to you. Please do not stroke the dog. And in fact, I have a clip of this of my own dog who was sat minding his own business and someone did a flyby stroke of him. Please don't ask questions. Well, you can ask the handler, but please bear in mind that you're probably the 53rd person that day who was asked about the dog. Kind of, you know, how are you meant to have your independence if you're stopped by every single stranger that goes past? Imagine if you go to the shop and you're just stopped by everybody who asks you intrusive questions about your personal life and your medical life. It's exhausting, to be honest. Absolutely exhausting. And handlers have been known to get stroppy, and then they get bad reputation for being stroppy. And actually it's because they're tired, they're out of energy, and they had 83 people ask them why they needed an assistance dog that day when they didn't feel well in the first place. As you can see, mine's got a medical alert symbol and do not distract. This is really important when it comes to medical alert dogs. You cannot distract them. It could be a matter of life and death, and I'm not exaggerating this. There have been instances where dogs have missed alerts. At the end of the day, they're not robots, they are dogs. And dogs do get distracted and they can miss alerts, and it's really important that you're not the cause of that. The reason I'm hard of hearing on my vest is because people try and talk to me and I can't hear them. Some people that don't talk to handler causes stress on the back of their vest, and it's really important that you take note of that. Some people, honestly, it can cause a medical episode. In terms of if you're an assistance dog handler, what you need to remember is that not everyone likes dogs and not everyone is really clued up about dogs. If you do unfortunately have an access refusal, it's really important to stay calm. I know it really hurts when you have disability discrimination happen to you. Often it comes from a lack of information, so this is a really good time to educate and inform. Stay really calm, film the encounter, and just calmly ask to speak to the manager. Don't get angry, don't get violent, because then they will have every reason to throw you out of the shop. It is scary being refused access, and it is frustrating. I do understand that, but it is really important to remain calm. You should not let your dog wander around the premises out of control. Your dog, in general law, surrounding dogs, has to be under close control. There is a disturbing rise in, particularly among the young handlers, young assistance dog handlers, using very heavy aversive equipment to train their assistance dog, and it is really quite a big concern to me. I'm well known. I am quite blunt when it comes to my views on aversive equipment. I don't sugarcoat anything. Some people mistake that for me just being vile, but actually I'm really nice. I just don't sugarcoat things. I do not at any time recommend the use of aversive equipment such as e-collars and prong collars to train anyway, but also when accessing services. These collars in the UK and this equipment and this aversive equipment is not acceptable by the general public usually, and harsh handling will not be accepted by the general public. Again, nothing in the law, sadly, about the use of aversive equipment, but if someone sees you doing something to your dog that they don't like, it could cause access issues in the future. There was a very famous incident a few years ago where someone took an assistance dog to Crufts in a prong collar. As someone who has an assistance dog and someone who shows her dogs in conformation dog shows, I saw in full panoramic vision the result, which was the exhibitors and stall holders who attended Crufts went berserk about this prong collar. It was one handler in a prong collar, with a prong collar on their dog. Subsequently got aversive equipment banned from Kennel Club events. That was the backlash and the uproar that this equipment caused. It is deeply worrying that there is a trend among young handlers to use this really quite heavy aversive equipment and they will defend it quite viciously. Their right to put a prong collar on what I've seen puppies, not really understanding the full weight of what they're doing. And when you try and explain, which I don't do very well because I'm just hideously blunt, the fallout and the backlash that can happen with this kind of aversive equipment, you just get accused of not being open-minded. And I've seen it where qualified professionals have been literally screamed down by teenagers who want to use a prong collar on their dogs. So I've been talking a long time about assistance dogs now. I hope I've provided a clearer overview of the laws and rights and responsibilities around assistance dogs within the UK. Any questions, and I will look at them all and I will do a Q&A separately to this, as this is all pre-recorded. I'm not doing this live because I'm working this weekend. So just pop any questions you have for me in the comments below. Again, I must reiterate that laws around assistance dogs are particularly vague, and so a lot of the information that I've given you is just my opinion mixed in with kind of information I've got from what service providers want, and my work personally, my personal work working around assistance dogs and doing what I do, which I spend a lot of time doing and do for completely free. So it's something that's really close to my heart, really, because I've seen the amazing things that these dogs can do and the difficulties that people have because they choose to utilize an assistance dog over other, and sometimes an assistance dog is better than any equipment. So for my own disability, I can find out after the fact what's happened, by which time I'm already quite poorly, or I can be told, he tells me probably about 15 minutes before a medical episode, and that's honestly changed my life because now I can stop the medical episode happening actually before it does. So I can actually take steps to stop it, which is incredible. And I'm teaching Lyra to take over, but Lyra is a whole different kettle of fish, and I'm actually doing another talk tomorrow about my training journey with Lyra, which should be quite interesting because she's an interesting dog, let's face it. This is actually her vest that I've just commissioned for her because she's just she's at a standard now. I feel she can be labelled as a fully trained assistance dog, which is good. We got there. Fabulous. So any questions, just let me know and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for listening.